u biex tissejjaħ elezzjoni ġenerali.
In case you haven't heard, Maltese people take elections very seriously. An intense partisanship exists, and this can be seen by the high voter turnout at elections, which typically dwarfs the EU average. Up until the 1960s, the Maltese political landscape was dotted with smaller political parties. None of them lasted for more than a few years, and by 1971, only two major parties remained: the Nationalist Party and the Labour Party. They have remained top dogs since, polling over 98% in the 2017 general election. Over the years, both major parties have left an indelible mark on the national fabric. The two main parties used to go tooth and nail against one another, with Labour's identity as a workers' party clearly distinct from the Nationalists' more affluent, business-friendly image.
Il-poplu Malti għadu u jibqa' wara l-moviment tal-ħaddiema.
But over the years, have the Labour Party and the Nationalist Party become too similar?
Tagħna huwa fil-libertà li jagħmel għażla jien fl-opinjoni tiegħi ċara bejn żewġ pożizzjonijiet kompletament differenti minn xulxin.
The Maltese electorate has observed the two parties somewhat converge on a number of major policies. The debate on the fundamental principles underlying the democratic process has been settled. The parties are also seemingly singing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to a host of other major issues. Even the stick with which parties beat each other has seemingly become the same. You would be forgiven if you thought that this text was in a recent electoral campaign by the Nationalists, but they are actually from the Labour Party's manifesto way back in 1996. It seems like the more things change, the more they stay the same. But why? Let's take a look at what in politics is known as the left-right political spectrum. During the French Revolution of 1789, members of the National Assembly divided into supporters of the king to the president's right and supporters of the revolution to his left. The term has evolved. The left later on became associated with parties seeking to safeguard workers' rights, allied with liberal parties. To the right, Christian democratic parties were organised by Catholics who saw liberalism as a threat to traditional values. In Malta, the Labour Party was typically leaning more toward the left and the Nationalists towards the right. Now, each of our individual beliefs puts us somewhere on this political spectrum. Different societies tend to have different views towards political issues, but the belief of the majority of voters typically lies somewhere around the middle of the spectrum. It makes more sense for parties to base their principles closer towards the middle, rather than either end of the spectrum, because, logically, their message will resonate with more people, resulting in a larger share of votes. In political theory, this is called the median voter theorem. The principles of the median voter can vary across different countries. Traditionally, the American median voter leans more towards the right, being generally against government participation in the economy and more inclined towards individual liberties.
All voters said they were uncomfortable with a socialist candidate for president.
Over the years, the two main Maltese parties have moved more towards the centre of the political spectrum, such that the distinction between the fundamental principles between the two parties is not as clear as it once was, a concept which, up until a couple of decades ago, seemed unfathomable. Partisan battles are no longer fought on fundamental principles, but specific, hotly debated issues have become the new battleground. The upcoming election will probably not be too different, with parties going tit for tat with each other. But you can be sure that once the smoke clears, voters may realise that the two parties are more alike than they care to think.